Okay. I'm going to introduce my partner and our demo guy today, Tim O'Sullivan, and he will be doing the presentation. Thank you, everybody that joined us, and hopefully this will be informative and you can all get something out of it. In the meantime, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to type them into the Q&A, and we will be answering them if we can. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Patricia. Hopefully everybody can see my screen showing a little bit of a slide deck. I've got just 3 or 4 slides that I'm going to go over, but thanks everybody for attending. This is going to be on the new workflow engine and the business events, kind of tying the two together. Wanted to just take a little bit of time, and I know this is a rescheduled, so we thank you for your patience and allowing us to do that, and making it where it's a little bit better presentation, so that hopefully you get some good information. I'll preface this with saying it is going to be a bit techy, so we're going to get into the weeds a little bit on the workflow engine as well as the business events. We are going to record this and make it available. I'll make the slide deck available, as well as the demo script or the webinar script that I've created, just like in times past. Once we get those published on YouTube, that'll be available for you to reference back to. So gonna just jump right in. One of the things that kind of what we wanted to accomplish with this one is to show the new workflow engine and create a light to medium kind of complexity workflow that basically takes the shipment screen, and we're going to add an inspection step. So maybe somebody in the warehouse needs to review, you know, the pick and pack part of it, and we want to inject a inspection step into that. I'll show kind of the flow chart of that on the next slide, but basically what we're going to do is we're going to add some custom attributes, user-defined fields to the shipment screen. We're going to add an inspector field that's going to tie to a employee lookup, and then we're going to have an inspection status, whether it's either pass or fail. And then at the inspection request, we're going to fire a business event that is going to send an email to an individual that there's an inspection ready to happen. And then we're going to add some decision tree for the pass fail with some buttons or via the action screen. And kind of graphically what that looks like, this is it. And I by no means I'm going to take full credit for this. I'm borrowing a little bit of what Doug Johnson did a few weeks ago. There's a YouTube video on that. I'll make that available as well, where he goes through and just does the inspect part. I'm adding the business event piece of it in, and a couple of other things that he didn't add, just to kind of round it out to where I thought it would be a little more real life test case, and be able to kind of tie the pieces together. So in this kind of dash box, this is the piece that we're going to add into our shipments screen workflow. So our initial state, a shipment can be either on hold or on an open state, and then I can go in between those two via the action menu currently, or even some of the elevated buttons. I can do that. What I'm going to do is we're going to create an inspection step that when you click request inspection, either through the elevated button or in the action menu, it's going to fire a business event to send an email. And then we're going to go into that inspect workflow. And then what it's going to do is give you a decision tree where when you're in that inspect status, then I can either fail it, which would put the shipment back on hold, or I can pass it, which would then send it to an open state. And then once it's open, I can follow my standard ship confirmation, invoice completed process. We're not going to go through this side of it. We're going to stop once it comes back to the open. So I don't know that it's going to take the full hour, but we'll give it a go and work through it. And as Patricia said, as you have questions, please put them in the chat. So I'm going to jump into Acumatica here. And what we're going to do is we're going to go into the shipment screen and kind of look at the out of the box behavior before we've done anything with our workflow. So if I go into an existing shipment that happens to be on hold, you'll see I just have a few buttons. I can remove the hold. I can do that either through this elevated button here or through the action menu, remove hold. And you'll see, the default workflow is only giving me a few things that I can do at this particular status. So as I, remove that hold and move through the different steps, then I can get more actions that I have the ability to interact with. So at this point, there's no way I can engage this inspection piece to where I need to, send an email to an inspector and have them come in and do the inspection and then either pass or fail it. So how do I do that? So what we would do is we're going to go into our customization and go into our show state diagram, which is a new customization element in 2020 R2 and above. It may have actually been even earlier, but 20 R2 and 21 R1. I'm actually in the latest build of 21 R1. So I'm at 21.106 on this demo site. And what I'm going to do is we're going to go in and first we're going to add some attributes that we created. So let's go into the attributes and show the attributes that I created for this. And again, I could do that within the workflow or not. So I've created two. I've created an inspector, which is going to use the selector control type. And then it's going to use the schema object, the employee table, and it's going to pull back the employee ID. So that's custom attribute number one. And then the second one is the inspection status, to where I want a combo box with the selections of either pass or fail. And we're gonna interact with these through the workflow, and we're going to basically hard code the values in that field when we either select pass or fail for the inspection. So those are the two attributes. Now I need to get them on my shipment screen. So I'm going to go back into my shipment screen and I'm going to add them in manually right here using the manage user defined fields. So I'm going to add them at the header level. So I'm going to go to manage user defined fields and I'm going to add user defined fields. And now I'm going to add that inspector first. And I want it in the first column. It's going to show up here in the first row. And then once that adds it, we'll come back and add the second one. So we're going to add the second one, which is that inspection status. So we're going to grab that one now, and we're going to make it that first column, and we're going to put it right underneath in row 2. So now I have the inspector and I have the inspection status that are going to now open up and add my user-defined fields here, where I have an inspector and an inspection status. So you'll see I've already kind of played around with it a bit, and it's picking up the data in this specific shipment that was there previously. So now what I want to do is I now want to go into that workflow and start building a new workflow for adding this request inspection here, and then also that ability to do the pass fail. So I'm going to go into my state diagram, And, this screen could be a little bit daunting at first because it looks real busy. But as we kind of work through the different steps, you'll kind of get hopefully a little bit more clarity as we go through. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to insert an inspection step in between my on hold, which I can request. I want to be able to request an inspection when a shipment is on hold. And then I want to be able to interact with that and then either push it to an open status when it's passed, or I want to go back to my on hold state when it's not. So how do we do that? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into a custom workflow, and I've got a shell that I've set up. And the way you would do that, if one didn't exist, you would hit new, give it a name, and then enter it by going into it. So I'm going to go into this workflow, and it looks a lot like it is the customization project manager. So it uses all the same elements that if you've done customizations before, that you'll be able to pick up. And because I started it from the shipment screen, it's already added my screen to this workflow. If I was building this from scratch, I would need to go into my screens and actually add that screen into my customized screens area so that I can then interact with it. And you'll see I've got a default workflow currently, and that has got some states and transitions already predefined on how this moves through the default workflow. When I'm in a shipment, what happens? What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to come in and add a new one. And just another little caveat, I learned on automation steps and have been doing that for about 12 years. So this is all new. We're starting to really get in and figure out, the coolness of it and the power of it that you have. So please ask your questions. May not be able to answer them today, but we'll definitely get back to you. I'm finding little nuggets as I go through just even preparing for this webinar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit on the workflows, and I'm going to hit an add workflow, and I'm going to use the default workflow type, which is going to basically make a copy of the existing workflow. And then I'm going to call this shipment inspection. And I'm going to hit OK. So it's added a new workflow that's using the default workflow as my base system. And I'm going to use it in an inherited mode. So anything that I do here is actually going to be what's going to be used. And I'm going to make it the active workflow, and I'm going to hit save. So just doing this, nothing has happened. And this is a big point and a little bit of a change from how automation steps work, where when you made a change in automation steps, when you hit the save button, it was immediately active in the system. So now that they've moved it into our customization project editor, now when you create your changes in the customization editor, you now have to go through a publish process. And that publish process does restart the IIS web server, which in turn will basically knock off or kick off all the users that are on the system. So kind of just warning to the wise that you need to kind of be careful doing this. When you do publish, it is going to knock users off, and you need to do it kind of in a maintenance window scenario. So I've created my workflow now. Now I can start kind of working around it. And the few things that I need to do initially is I need to set up some actions that are going to be able to interact with this, in that I need to be able to do the request the inspection, and then I need to be able to fail and pass the inspection. So I want to go ahead and set those up right now before we get too far into it. So I'm going to go up to actions, and then now I'm going to click on my create new. And I'm going to give my action name is going to be request inspection. And I'm going to kind of reword it here and call it inspection request there. And what I'm going to do is now I want my action type to be that of the workflow. And I want to do it at the actions level. And I'm going to do update. So at this point, this is all I need to do to get my action established. So I'm going to click that. And then now I'm going to come in and do a new one for inspection fail. And then we're going to say, I'm just going to keep it the same, inspection fail. And again, I'm going to go to workflow and then actions and hit OK. And then I'm going to add the last one in that I'm going to do inspection pass. And then we're just going to do that and set it to workflow and actions and hit OK. So now I've defined my 3 actions. And now what I need to do is go back into my workflow and create a new state. So I'm going to go into my shipment inspection. And I'm going to go up to the plus and I'm going to add a new state. So a state is, you know, when I'm in the shipment screen, if I'm in this instance, it would be kind of think of it as status. So if I'm on hold, what are the things that can happen in an on hold state? In this one, basically, I can remove the hold. I can validate addresses and I can print the pick list. And this duplicate on toolbar checkbox, if I click that, then what this is going to do is create a button at the top that I can use that is outside or elevated from the action toolbar. So that's what this duplicate on toolbar does. So these are the 3 actions that I can do within that on hold. If I go to open, you'll see I get different ones. So now I can interact and confirm the shipment. I can put it back on hold. I can print the shipment confirmation. Again, I can validate the address, get return labels, or print the pick list. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a new one down here called inspect. And we're going to have it drop down at the bottom. So the identifier is just in this instance, I'm using a letter identifier. So if I go back to on hold, you'll see that the state property, the identifier is H, the open one is N, completed is C, and I'm going to just make the new one Z just to drop it down to the bottom. So I'm going to call it Z, and I'm going to call it inspect. So hit OK. And now you'll see now I have a new state called inspect, but I don't have any actions tied to it at the bottom. And now what I need to do is I need to basically go into the diagram view now, and you'll see that new state pop up. And now what I need to do is I need to tie it to on hold. So on hold, when I hit the inspection request, is going to push it to the inspect stage. And then if I do my inspection pass or fail, depending on the selection, if it passes, I want to interact with my open to push it to open. And if I fail it, I want it to just come back to on hold. So I can kind of wire a little bit of that up right here from the state diagram. So let me blow this up a little bit. And I'm going to click the 3 little ellipsis buttons here. And I'm going to actually create a transition on this. So because I selected the one from inspect, the only place I can go from here is to open, or this is where I want to go. So what I want to do is when I trigger it, I want to do the 2 pieces, which would be inspect inspection pass and inspection fail. So if I pass, then I want to go to open. So because I already had the actions defined, I could have created them here, but because I had them already defined, I can just select them there and hit OK. And now when I hit OK there, you'll see now I create a link from my inspection pass is going to go to the open state. So I'm going to add the second one, which is going to be the inspection fail. And then I'm going to move it back to on hold and hit OK. And now I'm going to get a link from the inspect up to the on hold. And now I want to create one from my on hold to inspect, which is that inspection request. So if I come up to this one and hit add transition, then I'm going to go into inspection request. And then I'm going to take that to now my inspect state. And now it's going to create a link back to that inspect. So by doing that, now I've tied my inspect state to my on hold and to my open on these actions. So either coming out of on hold using the inspection request, or coming out of inspect, either being passed to open or failed back to on hold. So if I go back to, I'm going to save that. So that's going to lock that in. And if I go back into my shipment inspection, then now I'm going to be able to see that I've got some additional things now in the tree where I've linked those together. So again, on my inspection step, if I pass, I want to move it back to open. And if I fail it, I want to move it back to on hold. So now the other side of this is I also want to add my custom fields that I added to the user-defined fields and the attributes. I want to add those here as well. So I want to add my inspector. And then I also want to add my inspection status. And this is important because this now will let those fields, I can kind of manipulate them right from the workflow. So if I wanted to make these required, I could set that required value for that field here instead of doing it at the attribute level. And if I needed to assign a default value, I could. Or if I want to disable or hide them, I could do that as well. But what I also want to do is I also want to be able to interact with these at this level. And I can do that by going a little bit deeper on the pass and fail. But I also want to make sure that once I pass a value into those attributes, I don't want them to be available to be modified on any of the other states. So I have to go into those other states and add those attributes into there and then make them to where they are disabled. So I'm going to go into the on hold and I'm going to add again those two fields. And in this instance, what I want to do is I want to disable them when it's on hold. I also want to do the same thing for the rest of these. So just quickly, I'm going to go down through and add these in. Notice that it has a hard time keeping those checked for some reason. So something to keep in mind when you're working on it. I'm going to go into inspection status. Save that. And then we're just going to keep working down through. Didn't take my checkbox, so we got to make sure we check it. Hit save. Just a few more to go. And looking through the documentation, it does look like you can interact with these to create these via import scenarios. So if you get a template, you could do this in a little bit more elegant manner than what I'm doing here. And go to invoiced. Status. And the last one is completed. Yeah, something quirky going on with that. So just something to be aware of as you're doing these. Okay, so now we've added all of those in and we've disabled them for all the states except our inspect. And then now what I want to do is I want to interact with them when I go into my pass or fail. I need to add them again here. So in this instance, I want to add the inspection status. And then what I'm going to do is when I create that, what I'm going to do is I want to cause this to go to the past because I'm on the trigger of inspection pass. What I want to do is then set it to pass automatically. So no one has to go in there and flip the switch and do it. I'm just going to have Acumatica through the workflow, add that in. And then in this case, I also want to change my employee, my inspector, to actually be a specific individual at this point. So it's EP002, I think. Oops. Okay. I'm going to hard code it to be a specific employee and a specific status. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the fail side. Okay. Go ahead and save there. That's enough zeros in there, so we'll see if it works. Okay, so I've got that defined now. And then what I'm going to do is start linking this together where we're now, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's actually 7. Hang on 1 second. Copy this and just make sure so we don't cause an error. There we go. So at this point, I've defined my my new workflow. I've created a new state called inspect with the inspection steps. So now what I want to do is layer in that business event. But to do that, I actually need to go ahead and publish this customization first to get all of that in the system so that I can then interact with it with my business event. So I'm going to go ahead and publish this. So this is the sorry about that. This is the process that you would go through to actually engage your change into Acumatica using the customization project editor. So once this finishes, again, what's happening in the background is it's making all of these changes active in the system, and it's going to restart the web server and then bring it back up once it completes. And then what I'll do is I'll open that back up, and then we'll layer in the business event that I've already created and tie it together to have it fire when the inspect request is generated. So it takes just a few minutes to get it published. So the website is updated. So now I'm going to close these, and you'll see I don't have any new buttons here yet, but when I refresh my screen, we're now going to see that inspection request button, which is down here. Now, the one thing that I didn't do is I didn't elevate it here. So I actually need to go back into my customization and elevate those buttons. So I'm going to go back into my workflow. It should default to my workflow that I was in. And then now I need to go back in and elevate those buttons. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to duplicate on the toolbar for the pass and the fail. That occurs in my new inspect state. And then I'm going to go up to my on hold, and on my actions, I'm going to do my inspection request and then elevate that as well. So this is handled under the action side, and then the duplicate on toolbar. So again, now I'm going to save that, and I'm going to republish it. It'll take just a few minutes to get those changes to be active. And then once those are done, then now those buttons are going to now show up as well as be on the action menu.
We have a question. Nick wants to know if this is available on the sales order screen as well.
It is.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's a few. If you go into the help file, there is a really good wiki help document on setting up workflows, and it explains, I think there's 5 to 7 out of the box screens that the new workflow engine works with right now. At least I'm on 21R1, so I can't speak to 20R2, but on the new 21R1, I think there's 5, 6, or 7, somewhere in that number. I think the opportunity screen, the shipment screen, the sales order, and maybe the purchase order, and a few others. So this was published now. And I'm going to close that. Now watch right here when I refresh. We should get our inspection request button now, which we do because we've elevated that now. And then we also get the same action in the action menu. So I get it here or here. So now I have the ability to, interact, and you'll see because I'm at an on hold stage. Remember, we made the user defined fields where you could not interact with them. We disabled them. They're visible, but they're disabled. So I can't change them once they're set. So now I'm going to kind of go back and add in the business event that's going to get triggered when this inspection request is fired. So I'm actually going to go and open up I have my email turned on to just process them manually right now. But you'll see there's nothing here on the pending emails to be processed. And then I'm going to go back in and go into my business event. And we're going to look at the one that I already created for this. So I created one called Shipment Inspector. And then what I did is, and this is where you have to publish that first so that you can interact with the new state, which would be inspect. So, excuse me, if I was setting this up from scratch, I would come in and give the event ID. I'm going to just keep this where if it's triggered on a record change, and then for each record, I want to fire this business event. In this business event, I'm going to look at the new field value of my status field. And when it gets triggered to inspect, then I want to fire and send my subscriber an email. So if I go to the subscriber side, and again, if this was doing it from scratch, I would click create subscriber, and then that would take me into my subscriber screen to where I can set up the notification template that when this gets fired, I'm going to send it, in this case, to my email. And I'm going to kind of mail merge and bring in the shipment number and say it's ready for inspection. And then down at the bottom, I want to give a link to where I'm going to use the same shipment number that's ready for inspection, and I'm going to embed that into the URL to where this will now allow me to click on that link and take me to that specific shipment record that is now requesting an inspection. So to tie those two together, now I have a subscriber for that inspector email. And it's triggered and it's active. So now when I'm in my shipment, and we'll just kind of go through the process from the beginning. So let me close this.
I have one more question.
Yep.
If they have customized the screen, when the workflow is available for that screen, how do they make sure that the two can live together, basically?
Yeah, so it will take into account any other previous customizations that were published. And then you could actually then interact with them with those published. If you have custom fields on, say, the shipment screen, you could then interact with them within your workflow customization. So it's, again, the beauty of Acumatica's development platform, that XRP platform, is being able to kind of layer on additional customizations, and they can all talk to each other through that process. So I'm actually going to create a new sales order. And once that comes up, then we're going to go in and put it to our favorite customer, and then go add in an item, and then go ahead and move it to a shipment. I'm going to use my AA customer. I'm going to add my Lego set to this. And we'll just order 10 of these. Save it to get a shipment number. And then we'll go ahead and create the shipment from here. And then once it opens the shipment screen up, then we're going to now see that we have this inspection request button available. And if I go to my user-defined fields, you'll see they're blank and they're empty, and they're empty and they're disabled. So I can't interact with them at this particular moment. And I have my sales order type set to always create my shipment on hold, so that I get that inspection request. You may want to do it later in the process, potentially, but you could do that as well. So now if I go to my emails pending process and I refresh that, you'll see that there's nothing there. And then if I click inspection request, what's going to happen is it's going to change the status to inspect. And then it's going to put it in the mode of now I can inspect it, and it's going to add my buttons up here for pass and fail. So if I hit inspection request, you'll see that my status is now flipped to inspect. And then in the background, that business event is running. And hopefully, if everything worked right, I should get an email here that says my shipment is now ready for processing or inspection. And then now I have that link with the embedded shipment in my URL. So if I hit process on that, it will send that to my PC Bennett email. Again, these can happen in the background. And then now if I open my email, we'll see once it comes up and it goes through the process, then now you'll see, now I get that. And again, you can make these as pretty as you want, or customer facing, or internally facing as you want. And then I could just click on that. It's going to open that tab back up or a new window and take me directly into that shipment. And you'll see now I get the buttons to do my inspection pass or fail. So if I pass it, it's going to go back to the open status. If I fail it, it's going to go to the on hold status. And then what it's going to do here is you'll see now we've allowed it to be open at the inspect status. So I could actually go in and fill these out. It's going to get overridden because of my my workflow. But when I hit inspect fail, so what it did is it now put my status on hold, but it populated my inspector and my status with the defaults that we set from the workflow. And now I can't interact with them. So again, now it also then reset everything and put it back to where I could do a request for that inspection again. So I hope you're kind of seeing the kind of the power that you can use to manipulate kind of your workflows. So I'm going to do it again. It will fire another business event because I've said anytime that status changes to inspect, then I want to create another email. So there's my email that's going to go out again. And then now I can come in and say, you know, I want it passed. And once I do that, whoops, I was actually on the wrong screen. So we'll do pass. Now it's changed again, my inspector to that hard-coded value, but it's changed my inspection status to pass. And now I can use that for reports or whatever I need to. But now my shipment is on open status. And now I get the workflow that I get for that state, that workflow state. So I can confirm the shipment. I can get return labels, I can print pick list, and I can put it back on hold. So I hope you see there's a good bit of power there. From somebody who's used to doing it automation steps, I can definitely see the power and the ability to see it graphically At first, like I said, it was a little bit daunting of like what's going on here. But as you start kind of stripping it away and kind of really looking at it, you kind of start getting the sense of what is happening kind of graphically. And I kind of appreciate how Acumatica has approached this from that standpoint. The only other thing I will say, and I'll go back into my PowerPoint, you know, there's a lot that can be accomplished. One of the things that we kind of ran into kind of in the conversion from automation steps to workflows, and I know a lot of our customers are on the call, was custom reports. So they didn't have an in-place migration from the automation step to the workflow. So when you had custom reports, we had to actually go back in and add those in as a addition to the workflow. So that's kind of really one kind of use where if you're adding a new report or an existing report and you want to add it to the menu system here, so I can do that through that workflow step. Some screens that don't have this reports, you can add that reports menu and then add reports underneath it, and all that's done in that new workflow engine. The other thing is was actually playing around with it, didn't get it done for this demo, but being able to send SMS text as part of that business event workflow as well. So if I go back into business events, I've kind of got it set up, but for whatever reason, AT&T is blocking text to get to my phone. But if I go to that same shipment inspector, if I wanted to add a new subscriber in here that would then push it to an SMS text, it's super easy to do. I just create a new type and then say I want to do an SMS notification. And then I could create a specific subscriber around that, and then be able to, you know, send it to a specific phone number of the owner, or in this case, it would, you know, I could send it to my cell phone. And then I'm also able to, in this instance, I have set up Twilio as the provider, but they support Amazon as well. And then I can use that Twilio, and then I could put in that same kind of mail merge type URL and stuff that we did in the email. I could send that in a text, and then you could, you know, use your finger to click on that and do that as well. So that's some other things that you can do with that. That is set up on the SMS providers screen. In this instance, I'm using Twilio, and I'm using, you can get a free account with Twilio. I'm not sure with Amazon. I haven't played around or set that one up yet, but there is a test mode and account that you can be in. They give you like $15 or $16 to play around with, and each text is like a cent. So if you want to kind of test this out, go to Twilio, TWILIO.com, and set that up. And then all you have to do is come in here. You have to have 3 pieces of information to do that: the SID, an authorization token, which is equivalent to a password. And then you actually have to set up a from number to text from within the Twilio service. So super powerful. We've been playing around with it. Couldn't send it to my number, but I was actually able to send it to one of our consultants from within that. So hopefully you see some benefit of the new workflow engine. And Patricia, I don't know if there's any other questions.
I don't have any questions right now, but if anybody has any questions, you can type them. You can raise your hand, and I will unmute you.
You can send them to my email either
later
as you think about them, timo@pcbennett.com, or you can send it through our sales email as well. And again, I'll make this deck available. This is the video from Doug Johnson that was kind of the basis for this webinar. So
And if you guys have any topics that you would like to see on this webinar series, please let us know. This is for you guys. This is for our customers, and whatever it is that you guys need from us, please let us know so that we can provide that information. Thank you so much. And until next time, I think tips and tricks on inventory is the next one. Thank
All right.
you.
Thanks,
Talk to
everybody.
you soon.
Have a great week.